Just going to do a quick video here talking about using two edges, oftentimes parallel edges, but for you guys that have been modeling and drawing for a while, it's not going to be anything real revolutionary, but some of you guys might need to see this because it might help you out a little bit. So using two edges can often be very useful. And in our case here in 2D, we're going to use it to split shapes up, basically. So we're going to create kind of a rectangular shape here for demo real quick. And we're going to split it by doing an edge like so, and then another edge, so two edges, parallel in this case as well, right? So we're going to continue the shape as if it was three-dimensional. So lining it up with your perspective, basically, and we're going to erase all the extra edges here. So we can split that very quickly in that manner. Now you can do this on any form as long as you can figure out the cross-section. But if something you're doing like a cylinder, for example, is like this, usually you have your cross section, the shape in the middle. Basically, we're going to do that same thing with that. So it'd be continuing in these areas, right? We can erase there. Okay, so for 2D, it's useful to use two edges to split things, right? Now, let's do one more example real quick. Let's say we had a sphere and it went to another sphere back here. Okay, so it's like one shape basically. Something like so. All right. If you were to cut here, usually this would be a little bit more rounded, but if you were to cut it here and at the same spot on the other side, what happens here is this rounds out like this. And it does this number, more or less, if you were to cut it apart. So parallel edges again, quite useful in some situations. Now, let's move on. 3D, loop cut, Control R, right click, Control B, bevel, X, delete, A, F. So you can split a shape like that if you need to. Let's say it was a little bit more complicated though. Do something like this. Alt Z. We're going to make it a zigzag. And let's say we wanted to do that here. We bevel it. X, delete, A, F. We get an issue. The inside usually doesn't triangulate correctly because it's an n-gon. So all you got to do is grab an edge, press F, fill it to the top there like so. Okay. Now that's not always possible because sometimes you might have additional edges. If as long as this is just a straight cut, you can usually, there's two different ways you can do this. You can grab these edges here, holding Control, clicking around, pressing F, it creates an n-gon. You don't want to do two edges and press F because then this doesn't join. Okay. So, but you can also do the midsections first and just fill these areas. And then this one here, you can alt click it or you can press A and F because we've already solved the triangulation for the most part. So just something to keep in mind there. Now this process just continues more or less. If you're doing loop cuts everywhere and you're trying to do like subdivision quad modeling, we do KCA here, or KC anyways. We cut something like this out, okay? Anytime you have an edge and you do a bevel and you chamfer it, it's parallel edges. It's usually quads, right? So this is good because you can add loop cuts into these, or you can select them as edge flows basically, or loop or face flows, or whatever you want to call it. Quite useful, but notice that we have the double edges now. So if I was to select all this and I just scaled it in, this is the same thing as extruding. Okay. So I wanted to point that out, that it's basically the same thing. If we were to just grab all of this real quick as faces, use the cursor selector with C, and we went around and did this. If we extrude and scale, so E and S, it's the same topo basically on a flat face. Extruding and scaling looks like this. Insetting looks like that, right? So it's all the same thing. You're creating parallel edges, two edges. That's really good because then you can take these kinds of shapes and you can work with them basically and do all kinds of other fun stuff with them perhaps. Let me dissolve some of these. It's better if it's more simplified geometry a lot of times, but let's just say we take this and yeah, we could do it like this. Why not? Maybe loop cut it in the middle, actually. We can do something like extruding it, bringing it out, scaling it, moving it, rotating it, all kinds of fun stuff you can do there to create cool stuff. Symmetrize it, drag this shape out a little bit, Alt Z. Okay, you can make something a little bit more complex, perhaps. The only thing you might run into an issue with is sometimes it creates non-planar faces when doing these types of edits. So you got to be careful that when you're moving things around, even something that might seem simple, you might end up creating a non-planar face. In the case right here, it's almost doing it. But non-planar faces are this, where one vertex is not even with all the others, basically, on the plane. And so you get the triangulation, even if it's a quad, and it could cause problems potentially if you're working on certain things. Subdivision doesn't really care about it as much, but if you're doing like voxel remeshes, it's a big deal. And mid-poly models, it can be quite a big deal as well, or low-poly models for that matter. Yeah, so basically, we can do this all day long. We're just playing around extruding, and yet it's two edges technically. I mean, it does create the loop, so that's going to happen, but you can see we can get some rather interesting issues if we don't do it quite right. But we can create really just cool, interesting designs this way very fast. So the two edges is, you know, nothing revolutionary, I guess, but it's interesting to think about, right? Like now you probably would look at modeling a little bit different from here on out. Play around with all kinds of different little nuanced details and whatnot once you do that. So, you know, play with your standard modeling tools, start learning how to tweak things and do all this fun stuff. It's a lot of fun. You can do it with n-gons as well and triangles, but it doesn't always work out maybe quite as well as you would hope it would anyways. Try a different shape. And see if we can't make something happen here. Just go straight down like that. Right. So if you want to inset first, you could. No need necessarily. You can also extrude and scale a little. Make changes and then extrude again and scale and move and rotate off of that. You can kind of see where we're going with that, maybe like a wing or something, perhaps. Who knows? And don't forget to use booleans, right? This is not like learning how to use standard modeling tools is super useful, but you can always use booleans as well to hit shapes that you want to hit in certain areas, basically. So you just modify this cube a little, maybe in this case. We'll use bool tools to join it to the other shape, basically. Maybe something like that. So then we can just select, Control Shift B with the bool tools add-on. And we can do auto boolean union. It'll be a destructive boolean. Go to edit mode, A, mesh, symmetrize, and we can symmetrize on positive X to negative X in this case. So positive to negative. And we end up with that. So booleans you usually have to clean up at some point, but still a fun little thing we can do here, right? And if we want to just recut different kinds of areas out like this, we certainly can do that. Extrude that all out, shift it around. And so hopefully this helps some of you guys out. If you're afraid of your models and afraid of kind of working on them, playing with really simple block out shapes, extremely useful because we can do all kinds of fun stuff here. Just keep working things, you see? Eventually you can convert this into subdivision, or you can use it as a sculpting base, whatever the case. But yeah, that's how you're going to create much more interesting designs. And it doesn't always have to be this simple either. You can do booleans or knife cuts, however you choose to see fit. Sometimes the booleans you need to do what's called a boolean knife cut. And that could be a little bit problematic if you don't know how to do that. So you want to look into Box Cutter and Hard Ops. They have a boolean knife cut that you can utilize. So if you need more space, you can do things like that. Right? We're still working with two different objects right now. But actually, we'll just go over it real quick since we got the time, right? So box cutter, you'll see we have knife cut here. You can use that. N-gon cutter, pressing D. Right. And all that does is it does this number. Creates that little cut there. And it's it should be destructive. I don't know if I had that on actually. Yeah, it's I don't know if it's a bug. I thought it used to do it non-destructively, but maybe it's a bug, who knows. That's the way it's always been and I never noticed. But yeah. You can do things like that. That's going to give you more predictable results a lot of times if you're trying to go through more complex shapes to use Boolean objects, right? But if you were to just do a regular knife cut from view, it doesn't always work out as well. Right? But now you can imagine you're going to make some crazy weapons or something. Maybe you're doing something crazy. You can kind of create your own little kit bash pieces or whatever the case, right? Just going to combine the shape with the shape a little bit just to see what it looks like. We're not combining it. I mean, we're just intersecting it, but you know, just checking out what it might look like in that manner. And maybe we can figure out how to work those into it if we wanted to. So you can create really complex things is what I'm getting at. Just model another piece that kind of has the same angles and whatnot. Anyways, yes, so that's using two edges and parallel edges, I guess, to make something happen. Oh, one thing I do want to mention before we move on, I'm going to just use the regular box cut N-gon cutter here. If we create a shape, and let's say we do some kind of little edge here like this, okay? We're just going to cut it and hit T to do a solidify, like this, you see? So we can Q and E, get it back, move it around with box cutter. We can do things like this. I think I would do it a little bit different, but you see the shape. Shift D, duplicate the shape. If you got to Alt H and unhide the cutters, you can. We're going to reuse it down back here. We're going to grab the shape, Shift select here, Boolean subtract with hard ops. Control number plaid plus or minus. We're going to. This one's a little tricky in edit mode. You see it turns off the solidify, so a little bit misleading. But we're just going to pull it all the way forward just so it's not cutting anywhere in here. Hopefully. All right, yeah. Right now we got that additional cut going on, so it doesn't look that good. But basically, when you start repeating the same edges around like this, you create patterns, basically. And that's good. That's kind of what you want to do, is start reusing elements from your designs in various parts of your model. It doesn't have to be a lot, just here or there. And it starts to create like a design language, basically. And you might find that to help out quite a bit. If you ever have to correct these kinds of areas, or like you want to rejoin them, perhaps. If you can select everything on the inside there, which is sometimes easier said than done. And the Booleans might make this a little bit harder, so be careful. But we select everything on the inside there and delete it. We have these two edge loops, or these two edges here. You see? Control E, bridge edge loops. We can send them back to where they were, perhaps, if you want to keep working with them, or maybe just dissolve them out or something. Right? So that wasn't looking good with those other cuts, and we can always work them back out, basically. You see? And then, you know, model, make changes to our model however we see fit. All right, guys. And so that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.